if you're building your own business, if you're a startup, if you're selling something, you have to get out there and like ask for what you want. I'm Anna Furmanov, and in order to say what I do, I have to go to my website and literally read it. Actually, no, I don't. I'm not going to do that, Nick. I am a customer insights advisor, and my company is a customer insights and strategy firm. And I take my clients through the customer insights roadmap. And if you couldn't tell from everything I've said before, my big focus in the work that I do with startups and growth always ties back to customer insights, customer research and insights, and how that helps inform their positioning and messaging.
The absolute perfect place to start. So you have a different background from most people I speak with because you came from B to C. Bum, bum, bum. This like the forbidden fruit of marketing for B2B marketers.
Is it? Why is it forbidden?
I don't know. I just feel like there's like a cult of B2B marketing. Like if you're there, you're there. And if you're in B2C, you kind of just tend to stick in B2C or something. I don't know very many people who have crossed over. And maybe my network's not that big. I don't know. But that's not
No, you're right, Nick. I don't either, actually.
It's just a thing. And somehow you made the leap. Maybe the grass is always greener till you're standing on it. I'm not sure. But you came up through companies like Blistex. Maybe some people have heard of that one. And Groupon. And you were doing consumer research and consumer marketing, which is something that is very much not a thing in the B2B space. Talk me through some of where you started with all this. And then how did you end up getting into B2B and ultimately going out on your own?
Yeah, like what was I thinking? Why didn't I just stay in B2C?
Where life is easy.
Where life is easy, supposedly, and we're just selling like $3.25 lip balms.
Precisely that, yes.
Great question. I'm kind of like just an all over the place person. Like I love to learn. I think that's at the core of me doing a bunch in my past. Like I was a consultant at Accenture for a few years. And then I actually started my marketing journey at Del Monte Foods. So that was like my first big, real experience in consumer insights and strategy. And that was just a summer internship that opened my eyes to like, oh, wow, this is really interesting. Like we're learning about what people are thinking, are doing. There's a lot of stuff that is kind of like magic and emotional. And this is interesting, right? And also very data driven. So there I worked on new product innovation based on understanding our target buyer at the time.
Something completely foreign in B2B.
And then after that experience, I went to work at Blistex. And that's where I did more of that consumer insights work. But I was really like a brand manager. It was beyond just consumer insights and strategy. It's like, how do you use that knowledge then to impact sales? So there was a lot of focus groups and consumer insights foundational work while I was working on the lip care innovation. But it was based on deep consumer research as the foundation. And then at Groupon, actually, let me take a step back because Groupon was in between two B2B startups. So after Blistex, I was like, okay, this is cool, but I want to get into tech. Don't ask me why I thought that because I can't remember. I was like, you know what? It's cool. I like this, B2C consumer packaged goods stuff, but I want to get into tech. And so I had an offer from Pepsi and I had an offer from a B2B2C food tech startup. And so I took that one and decided to go in that direction. And that opened up the doors then to the B2B world, which was like, oh my gosh, what am I doing here? But it was like a smooth entry because it was food. It's something that everybody can relate back to. And it was B2B2C. So it was selling into companies, but the users of the product were still people and they were employees in the office. And so we were providing food, lunch food to employees at work. So it was a kind of a smooth transition because I did I learned a lot about B2B, but I was still close enough to the B2C world. And so I loved that experience. And then after that, I went to Groupon because I wanted to see like, how is it to work at a larger, not startup anymore tech company with a lot of resources. I actually really liked startups, to tell you the truth. So then I went back and I headed up marketing at an ed tech startup. Again, that's like more B2B2C again, just in the education space. So you could see like I was learning a ton across, but my foundation was still consumer insights. And so when I went to the B2B side and noticed that it was lacking, I was like, well, I'm just going to do the thing I know is important and bring that in, the customer insights, customer research and insights part that was missing, and just made it a part of the work that I did.
When you were at Elevate K-12, that was like the ed tech startup?
Yes.
That ended 2019. Was that the turning point for you where you were like, I'm going out on my own? Like, when did this happen where you realized the problem was big enough that this background in consumer insights was unique, and the problem was that most of these B2B companies aren't doing this really at all, and gave you the courage or enough signal that was like, all right, there's something here. I got to go out and try to do something.
So I was laid off December 2019. And that was really the jumping off point for like,
I know the feeling.
yeah, I mean, and we're on good terms still to this day. Like it was just something that companies go through when they're not hitting their sales targets or they need to restructure teams, stuff like that. So I just wanted to take matters into my own hands. And I was like, you know what? I have always wanted to do my own thing and start my own company. And January 2020 is the time. It's got to be 2020. There's something about 2020 that is calling my name. And so that was the jumping off point. I was like, you know what? I don't want other people to figure out what my work situation is going to be. I don't want to have to be reactive. I want to be proactive. And I've always wanted to start my own thing. So, and the way that I started it was very customer insights driven, but I didn't talk about it in that way. I just did my work with that foundation at the core, but I did not talk about it in that way.
It was a different time. You beat the mass migration to solopreneurship. You beat me by 3.5 years. You beat most of.
I was like, haha, everybody, it's January 2020. And I remember walking my kids.
COVID, and you're like, what the?
No, but like before even COVID, I was like, this is the dream. I'm walking my kids to school. I don't have to get on the train. And like, there's no time to talk to my kids. They were little at the time, right? One was in daycare, one was in kindergarten. And I didn't even know what was going on in their day to day because it was like, just get them fed, get them washed, go to bed, wake up the next day, right? But then when I started to work for myself, it was like, wait, I decide and I want to walk them to school and I want to pick them up from school and I want to ask them these questions and have these conversations and take some time for snacks after school. And like, I remember thinking like, I'm so lucky that I actually can notice the seasons changing. Because before I didn't, you know what I mean? Like I didn't notice that the leaves you look up and you're like, oh, it's winter now. You just like look up for a brief second and you realize it's winter. Or you look up and you're like, oh, it's spring. And then you go back to your normal day to day.
Yeah, your work cave.
Right.
So you decide it's time to go out on your own. Your original position in the market, because you beat the mass migration, things were different back then. There wasn't a ton of competition. And there wasn't a ton of this idea of hiring out talent in this way. It was still a little, people were not so accustomed to the idea. It wasn't like very common. So it was like being a fractional head of marketing was, I think, the original position, because it was like, I can do any of the marketing functions. And for a while, I feel like that worked because there weren't a ton of people to pick from.
Yeah, it did. So February, I got my first client. And we met in the coffee shop and he's like, I'm building this startup. We could use your help. I'm like, great. I'm ready. Let's do it. I don't know what I'm going to do exactly, but that's okay because I can help you with a bunch of different things. And I went into their office because they were in the city and had like meetings with their team. And it was like, wow, it's happening. And then COVID hit. And they're like, sorry, we worked with you for 2 months, but we don't know what's happening in the world. So we have to stop. So I'm sure a lot of people experience that. And I'm like, oh, geez, 2020 isn't my year after all.
This is one of the things that I think people get stuck on a lot is like acquiring the first few clients, or even just that first one. That's the client that rewires your brain where you're like, holy shit, this is actually possible. Like I can earn money in any way I want. How did you meet this first client?
First of all, I had conversations with like 10 other marketing consultants and I just asked them like, what do you do with your clients? Like what work do you actually do? What do people need? How much do you charge? And pricing was kind of all over the place. Some people do hourly, some people do retainer, some people do project. It's probably still all over the place. And from there, it helped me kind of think about like, well, how do I want to approach this? So I did that. Meanwhile, I also made a list of like, who do I know that might need my help? And then I just emailed them and I'm like, I'm doing this now. Here's what I did before. Here's what I could probably help you with. But it was honestly like, I didn't know what the market needed. So I was just testing the waters. And from there, somebody responded. And that was my first client. We met once at the coffee shop. And then we met again, I think at the library or something. So it was somebody that's sort of local to where I live. And that really helped build even more trust, right? Because we had that first conversation in person and the second conversation in person. And then he was like, yep, let's go. So
There's something to be said for just going out and asking for what you want. A lot of people are just, that feels weird to them. Like going to your network and being like, hey, I'm like looking for work or I'm doing this thing. Like, do you know anybody? That's just like a weird feeling. And I think ever since I've met you, that's been something that like, you're like, I just am going to go out and get it.
you have to. If you're building your own business, if you're a startup, if you're selling something, you have to get out there and like ask for what you want. And it's not really asking for what I want. It's like, I can help you. Here's what I know. You would find this valuable. So maybe we should work together. Kind of like that. But it is sort of asking for what I want because what I want is to have a sustainable business for the long term. Like I never wanted to do it for like, oh, I'll just dabble for 6 months and then go back to full time. I wanted to make it work. Like that's the difference in mindset. I think you just mentioned like there are a ton of fractionals out there, a ton of solopreneurs out there, but maybe I have no idea data wise, but maybe like 20% of them are like, I'm just going to dabble and then I'll go back to full-time work.
To kind of have like one foot in each world, trying to like if this works, it's great. And if it doesn't, like not committing. I mean, I remember when I got laid off, I looked at all the job postings for like a VP of marketing role and I was like, oh, 2,000 people have applied for this job. You know what I'm going to do? Fine. I'm going to anything else. I can make money in a lot of different ways. Anything else will do. But yeah, I totally agree. I think there's like this half in, half out mentality that some people have. But I also just think like there's something about the lust of getting an inbound that people face. And I can't stress enough that even when I first met you, it's like, hey, what's like a business development thing I can do is like go and talk to people, like start conversations. And you were willing to do it. And I think that made a huge difference. So along this way, though, you go from, you were doing the customer insights and what was like originally more positioned around voice of customer.
Yeah, I did that as like to kick off my work. Yeah, but I never made it it was never my positioning to talk about voice of customer. I just did it. And everyone was like, yeah, that makes sense. It's just part of the work that you do as a marketing consultant. So it was part of the work. It wasn't ever a focus, but now it is.
At what point did you realize that that was the work worth zooming in on, other than the fact that you liked doing it. I think this is the thing that I think a lot of people get stuck on, where they're like finding the thing that like makes a huge impact on their client's business. They love doing, it solves a problem that people are going to spend their money on, like kind of that, all of those stars align. How did you decide that that was going to be your thing?
Well, Nick, I worked with you.
But but I didn't choose this for you. Like, your check's in the mail, like, but don't worry. Like,
it seems so obvious, just like anything that we look back and we're like, that was so obvious. Of course I knew that all along, but I struggled to figure out my differentiator, and I could not figure it out. I was like, I need to figure it out. I know I need to figure it out. This is what I help my clients with. Startups need to figure out what their differentiating value is. And I couldn't figure it out. And I think part of it is just being so close to the work that I do and doing it so many times over and over again. I can't see how anyone would do it differently. Like, why would anyone do it differently? I just assume that people do it the way that I do it. But then after some snooping around and just like trying to figure out if people do it that way, like getting into their website pages that describe their process, other people and companies don't do this voice of customer research, deep work, and like having that be the jumping off point for everything else. People don't do it because guess what? It's hard. It's hard. It takes time. There are researchers that are really skilled at what they do and they spend their life. And I know this because I come from consumer insights and strategy. And there are some like focus group leaders that know what they're doing and know how to not lead the session in a certain direction and know how to not put words into people's mouths or make them like react in certain ways. And there are some that just don't. So then the data you get back is trash. And if you're using trash data to inform your business strategy, then what do you think that strategy is going to be? Trash.
The saying that comes to mind on this was like, it's hard to read the label from inside the jar. Like, you were looking at it like you didn't realize that what you had was not obvious. There's a lot of people in the messaging and positioning space. And you're like, right, but there's a lot of people in this space. Like, so what? It's like, well, you have this approach that is actually radically different from the way that most people go about it, especially in B2B, turns out. So you had a system before this called MAS, the Marketing as a System.
It's on my podcast too, the Modern Startup Marketing Podcast. So I did an episode on, I think it's 10 parts of it, and I called it MAS.
One of the things that I hear a lot about people trying to crack this code is, how do you come up with an approach? Like, even just to pick an approach. And I think one thing that I appreciate about the way that you've operated is that, yes, there's one thing to like publicly plant your flag and something like, hey, here's my approach. It's called MAS. It's Marketing as a System. This is the way I do it. And then when you realize that it wasn't serving you in the way that you wanted, you were like, goodbye. There was like a little bit of friction there where you didn't just immediately throw the baby out with the bathwater, but you were like, I'm pretty sure this thing isn't serving me in the way that I want it to. And therefore, I'm okay with moving on to something else. How did you decide that MAS no longer served you and it was time for something else?
Yeah. If you tell me, Anna, to do good work with your clients, stop doing voice of customer research, just make assumptions with your positioning and messaging, I'd be like, no, we're not going to change that. But if you tell me that I am calling my process the wrong name, I'm totally fine with changing it. And there's like a unique reason for it. And it ties back to my differentiated value. Like, this all is stuff I agree with. So I'm not tied to things that I name. Trust me, names aren't my forte. Like, I still have to like rename my company after 5 years. And I never liked the name of my company, but I was like, there's nothing better. I can't think of anything. I actually was like sitting on a plane one of these like trips in the past couple of years. And I was like, okay, I just need to come up with a new name. So I started writing on the back of like some book in like inside page. And then I showed it to my daughter and she was like, what is this? She was just like, laugh. She's like, what? She's like, none of this is good, Mom. What is this for? And I'm like, nothing.
Well, what were some of the names that didn't make the cut?
Oh, don't ask me that, Nick. I'm so bad at naming. I couldn't even name my son. I had to like ask somebody else to like help with a list of names. But I'm not joking. Like girls' names I'm good with, but boys' names I'm not so good with. So you asked me what are some of the names that didn't make the cut? Oh, it's like my last name backwards and like Firma and like Vanam. And like, I just tried to think of like my last name and how I could change it up, but it's awful. Even I don't want that as a company name. And then I thought of like fruit. I didn't know where to start. I was like all over the place.
I know the feeling. I didn't name my company. My friend Ramona helped me.
Oh, okay. That makes me feel a little better.
Yeah, I didn't do it. She did the heavy lifting there.
Okay.
I had like, my original name was like Clarifying Craft or something. And I like bought the domain. I was talking to my friend. She was like, Nick, like, what is this?
Oh.
I was like, what do you mean? She was like, this isn't like a thing. This isn't the name of a company. She was like rattling off like a bunch of different ones in the same light. And then she was like Harness and Hone. And I was like, that's the one.
Oh my God.
She knew about all the stuff I was trying to do.
That's cool. I love that backstory because then I'm not the only one struggling with naming. I won't do it unless I know for sure. Like I need to feel that that's the one, right? Because I don't want to get the domain and like change everything over and all that stuff unless it really hits. So
I was lucky that there was nothing, like it was very early and I was like, I got to name this thing and get going. And so I would just like, I got something. I was like, Clarifying Craft. That sounds really cool. And I bought the domain. And then she was like, this doesn't make any sense.
Why didn't you go with nickbennett.com?
Because there are like 5 million Nick Bennetts out there.
nickbennett6.com.
Probably nickbennett.com is like 50 grand. Probably more.
I bet annafirmanov.com is available.
It's probable. There was like every variation of nickbennett.com, .co, .io, .me,
.ai.
Like,
you should do not nickbennett.ai.
All right, maybe that's the next product that we launch. That's the next product right there. Just like AI version of me. I don't know if anyone wants that. I don't think.
No, we don't want that, Nick.
So tell me about the time where you felt like, hey, this could actually work. Like this is a long-term solution, like the initial traction that you were getting. Like, tell me about that.
So each year, there's like a distinct theme for every year so far that I've had my business. And I think about that because I'm like, how do I compare 2020 with 2021? And how does that compare to 2022? And 2020 was like the experimental year of let's just try this thing. And then COVID happened and I'm like, I'm still going to continue to try this thing, whether there's COVID or not. So I just continued on, got some more clients after March, April, May, I think like after that, the summer was better. And then I was able to get more clients that year, but it was still very experimental. 2021 was like, whoa, startups got funding and they needed my help. People are done with COVID. We're over it. VCs are funding startups and they suddenly need my help. And I remember being like so overwhelmed. I had all these clients. I was super undercharging. I think I was charging like $2,000 a month or something, or like, but doing a ton of work. And it was $2,000 a month. That was a steal. And that's why I was overwhelmed with clients. Yeah, it was a really busy year. In 2022 summer, VC funding pulled back. And then I was like, oh, I have kind of a free summer. That's fine. I'm going to just enjoy it. And I actually liked it because the front of 2022 was pretty busy. The end of 2022 was okay as well. But the summer was completely quiet. There was nothing going on. So I had a taste of like, what would it be like if I had the summer pretty much off for the most part? And it was really nice. Like spending time with family, spending time on hobbies, stuff like that. 2023, wow, why does that seem so long ago? 2023 was okay, if I remember correctly. I'm going to have to go back to my notes. But what was interesting about 2023 and 2024 was that my revenue streams, suddenly I was not just doing my core consulting work as a fractional, but I had podcast sponsors and I was doing this go-to-market boot camp with EdTech founders. So there's like multiple revenue streams now. And I was like, whoa, the potential here is huge. But then 2024 kind of took a little tilt towards being quiet again.
I've heard that from a lot of people. 2024 was a weird year for a lot.
It was a weird year. And so the extra revenue streams went away. Tons of client work went away. And I was like, I can't just keep trying to ride these waves. VC funding happens and VC funding is pulled back. And like, I have to ride that wave. I want to have something where I feel like there's more consistency, right? So that's like the next level of having my business plus AI showed up, right? Plus all of the marketing consultants showed up. Everybody suddenly wants to be fractional because now they can use the AI tools to do the work. And so that creates some challenges too. I'm sure not just for me, but for everybody out there. And that's why I started working with you, Nick, because I knew that I needed like a coach to help me out of this and into like, I want to jump away from what everybody's doing and be on the next train to like the future of my business. And how do I position it? And how do I message it? And what does the future look like for me going forward that's more consistent?
You're like the 1 millionth person to tell me that 2024 was a weird year for sure. Because that was really when the rush started to settle in of all the migration to solopreneurship and fractional work and independent consulting, whatever you want to call it. That rush started to settle in. People are getting established. A lot of higher profile people who were in-house are like, oh, well, I'll just work with a bunch of companies. So I think there's a lot of pent-up demand for those people. And when they go solo and go out on their own and take clients, that pulls demand from a variety of different places. Now, that stuff evens out over time. The demand doesn't stay pent up, but it's tough when there's a lot of people who can make a similar claim. I think that was one of the things that you were like, I don't want to play that game anymore. That's what most people say. It's like, I'm done playing that game. But it wasn't like all perfect. I think you told me that you were like, could this really work for me? There was a point where we were working hard on this thing and you're like, I don't know if this is really the thing, if this is what it's supposed to be.
Yeah, part of it is because like, why is it so simple? Why does it boil down to the thing that I was always doing, but not positioning myself in the right way? Why does it seem like that's so obvious?
Because it usually is. Almost always is.
And so that's when I was like, is this thing going to work? Because this seems just like too simple. I'm not changing anything. I'm just changing my perspective on things and how I talk about things and how I position myself.
I think there's something to be said for how people perceive the thing that they're looking at, which is what most people in our position as independent business owners, let the buyer decide. And that's a shitty place to be in. And it's like, it's weird, even though a lot of this is like conventional business wisdom where you're like, yes, of course, niche down, duh. But when the rubber meets the road, it's like, is this really going to make a difference?
Turns out it does. Guess what? Guess what? Time and time again. It's like, oh, I help other companies do this stuff and it makes a difference. But for me, it's not going to make a difference. No, it actually does. Because I'm not an outlier in that way.
Tass Bober said something when I spoke with her a few weeks ago, and it stuck with me, which was like, it's hard to explain this feeling to people or explain that this is going to happen. And it's true because it's not measurable. It's not like verifiable, but it is true. And I'm still struggling to figure out how to explain it to people or make it more concrete. But it's like, when you own some mind share, when you are known for an expertise that you own, she was like, I promise you, people aren't going to think that's the only thing that you can do.
My messaging now is really tight around positioning and messaging, like customer insights that helps inform your positioning and messaging. If I was standing in an elevator with somebody, it's really easy to just say in 5 seconds, what is it that I do?
Yes. I'm suggesting that people feel really boxed in and limited by that. But you know that like the only thing you do, it's not that the only thing you do is talk to your buyer's customers. And you're like, all right, here's a transcript of my conversation. Like there's more to the work than that. You do get into go to market motion and how to apply this work to sales. How does it apply to marketing? How does it apply to product? There's so many places that this work gets deployed across the organization. It's not as like, yes, the thing that you're going to do is turn customer insights into positioning and messaging. This is like the investment that people will make. That's clear. But it's not necessarily the only thing that you do in that way. Like it's bigger than that. But the positioning of it needs to be really, really narrow in order for you to become known for this expertise that you own. Kind of like when I started this podcast, I was even getting nervous because I was like, I don't know how this show's going to like make a difference for me and for this business. He's like, you know, it's going to. And I was like, I do, but how? I just, there's friction there. Like, how do I really know that it's going to make a difference? Like, I know it intuitively, but how am I going to know that it did the thing later on? Like, you don't. And I was like, just drink your own whiskey on this one and like see it through. And he was 100% right. In the same way that Tess was right. In the same way that what you're describing is right. Like it's hard. It's not measurably verifiable in that type of way. But all of a sudden when shit starts to fall into place and people message you and they're like, that's the thing. We had this thing come up and we thought of you. You're like, wow.
And people aren't asking like, wait, Anna, I thought of you, but do you help with this work? Like I would get messages like that in 2021, 2022, 2023. Like, hey, there's somebody that needs marketing help. Can you do this work? I don't get messages like that anymore. We know Anna doesn't do that work, or we know Anna does. And so we message her about it, right?
The ops are just better fits. Like it just makes that conversation easier. It's like the problem's already highly visible. This was the other thing that I think got turned around for a lot of people is like, you don't have to discover the problem anymore. Now you're selling them. You're selling the problem. You're like, cool, make an investment in solving this problem. But it's very different from being like, well, what's going on in your world so that I can custom scope a solution for you?
That's the big shift is let me try and figure out what problem you have. And then let me try and fit what I know to fit what problem you have and talk about it in a way. And doing that every single time, like, and changing it. I don't change anything. I talk to now from the work that we did together, Nick. And it's amazing. Like that was an aha moment too. When I get on a discovery call with a prospect and they tell me about what's the size, how many customers they have, what's the product they're building, who they're for, all that stuff. And then they're like, well, I want to know, let's like talk about you now. Tell me about you. And then I just start talking. I'm like, well, let me just tell you. And it's not about the work that I do. That was a big aha moment. I don't talk about the work that I do. I talk about my perspective on marketing and I talk about my perspective on startup growth and I talk about my perspective on where the problem is. Then I stop and they're like, okay, but so how do you fix that? And then I'm like, great, you want me to tell you how I fix that? Perfect. But at least then I have them on the same page of, yeah, she's right. That is the problem. That was super impactful to my sales conversations. And I think that it could change a lot of people's momentum in sales. Not just like, yes, of course, solopreneurs, but I think also startups that I work with. Like we enter sales conversations as, okay, I need to learn more about who I'm talking to. And now let's jump right into the product we've built. But this is such an interesting setup and it naturally flows into, well, how do you fix that problem? Because you're right, it is a problem.
Yeah, there's something to be said for having your conversation. At least that's the way that I describe it. And I think a lot of times, and I was guilty of this, and I think I knew it theoretically, but I didn't know it in a practical application. It was like, how do I turn every conversation in this business context into my conversation? This notion of how do you make the problem highly visible? And it's definitely an art. Most people tell me that they're not natural born salespeople. And it kind of just takes a lot of the pressure off of being like, how do I do sales to people versus, hey, look, if they see the world the way that I do,
then we might be a natural fit.
it's tough because I don't think a lot of people spend enough time trying to articulate how they see the world to get other people on board.
My personal experience and also working with startup founders, we don't spend enough time on that problem story part, right? But it matters so much in your sales conversations, in your sales emails, in your social media posts. It matters so much. We talked about the other day, Nick, what do you need to post about on social media? 2 things, your unique point of view and proof. Those are the 2 things, right? I love it when people leave me with like, just give me something, like one thing I can remember. That's easy. I need to do this again because I used to just like have a Trello card and I would put in like something really simple that I could remember in one sentence from somebody that I respect. And I stopped doing that, but I should do it again.
So you're saying you put this on your Trello board, what to write about online, the problem or proof?
Yeah. The problem, like your perspective on the problem and proof.
Just prove that you're going to do what you say you're going to do,
Exactly.
that it works. Proof that this thing works. Proof is an interesting subject because I've found that if people lack proof, they're afraid to go get it. My first proof points were, I lost the deal early on because I didn't have enough proof. This guy straight up told me, he was like, Nick, I like what you're saying. I believe in what you're saying. And I agree with you. I think you're right. This is not enough proof for me. It's too risky. Each proof point reduces the risk for a buyer. The more proof you have, the easier it is for people to say yes. I lost that deal and I said, never again. Overwhelming proof is the name of the game. Someone who's legendary at this guy, Doug Lawson. He taught this to me very early on. And he was like, you got to figure out the proof on this thing. And so I went out there, I did work for free. I did a whole bunch of stuff. I said, gather as much proof as I possibly could because people are skeptical. There's a lot of bullshit floating around this world, especially LinkedIn. So the proof goes a very, very long way.
Absolutely.
All right, Anna, looking back, what's something you would have done different?
Differently, I think I did things the right way. I don't think I did things the wrong way. The only thing that I regret is not changing my podcast sooner, but it will be changed very soon. When this episode is released, it's probably going to be like changed, weeks on end of change would have happened. But yeah, that one I kind of sat on that. I mean, my company name probably should have worked with you sooner, Nick. Let's just be honest here. But, I don't regret my journey because every year, like when I talked about all those years, like every year gave me something. Every year taught me something, whether it was about my pricing strategy or how many clients I could take on or multiple revenue streams or, where my sweet spot is working with clients. Every single year gave me some knowledge. And so I think that's the goal for solopreneurs is make sure you're getting something out that's different from the previous years where you're going above and beyond.
Learn something.
Just learn something, for goodness sake.
We didn't talk about your podcast, but there was no opportunity to dig into this, but I wanted to talk about how you've done over 200 episodes of a podcast, which is basically like, that's about 198 episodes more than most people have ever get through. So I think that thing's made a massive difference in your business for sure. I'm excited to see what it becomes, which I already know it's going to become, but I'm excited to see you bring it to life.
So I can already talk about the name of it. It's called Building with Buyers. And Nick, you helped me come up with the name for that. And it ties back into customers and how customers help startups build to the next round. And of course, customer research and insights is part of that, but it goes way beyond that. So I'm very excited to finally have a show that is aligned to my positioning, messaging, and my point of view. So yeah, I'm excited.
Massive win. All right, Anna, let's end here. What do you want to build that you haven't built yet? What does the future of your business look like?
My email sequence. Remember like that email sequence that I tell you that I'm going to work on and then I never do? That is probably like the cherry on top of all the stuff that we've worked on together, Nick. So that's probably why it's taking me forever.
It doesn't have to be about what we're doing. I'm curious, like, do you want to write a book? Do you want to go give a keynote? Like, what do you want? Is there something you want to do?
I don't want to write a book. My goal with my business is like, I want to work with my clients for like a more consistent amount of time where there is clear tie into the growth of the business. And so my contract lengths are a bit longer now. And like that goal is important to me going into 2025 is like so that's happening. And I'm really excited about it because it's really hard to prove that the positioning and messaging work and like go-to-market strategy is impacting the business without working together and just like improving and optimizing and making sure that everything ties back into your goals. So that's my goal for 2025 and also the email sequences, but that's separate. And also my business name, my company name, and also my website. There's a ton that I want to improve, but I think what I just told you is the main, what I want to focus on for this year.
Love it. You were to board a rocket ship and leave Earth tonight, what would be your last meal?
Oh, my last meal? Wow, that's tough. I think I would want a chirashi bowl, which is all different kinds of sushi, fish on top of rice, and dark chocolate cake. But like there's this dark chocolate cake that has 12 layers and it's from this restaurant in Chicago called the Moody Tongue. So if you ever find yourself in Chicago and you like chocolate cake, then go there. So I think that's probably what I would want. And like a glass of red wine.
Ooh, like a cab?
Yeah.
Cool. I'm with you there. I'm not a death by chocolate type of person, but hey, I'll try anything. Everyone I talk with who's based out of Chicago is like, die hard. There's a restaurant in Chicago that has the best food and you'll never convince me otherwise. I love it. Thanks, Anna. I didn't pay you to come here and say nice things to me. That wasn't my intention with inviting you. I do think your story is interesting. I'm thankful that I got to be a small part of helping you build something cool here. But so thank you for sharing your story with me. I know more people feel seen because of it.
Well, thank you. And my route is just one out of 1,000, but I am so happy to share my journey and how it's been going. So thanks for having me here, Nick. You're awesome.
Thank you, Anna. You're awesome.